Okay. Well, thank you for the introduction and giving a quick overview about what I'll be talking about today. So first, I just want to say welcome to my session. A huge thank you to the CP conference for having me today. I know I'm in good company with some of the people that presented yesterday and this morning, so really excited to be here. And then thank you to everyone who's taking time out of your Saturday to join and watch me. So throughout this session, just to give a quick overview, I'll be sharing a little bit about my story, how I've used social media to advocate for myself and the disability community, and then most importantly, how you can use social media to do the same. Okay. So to begin, I want to take it back to the beginning. I'm not going to, get into the details about what CP is, only because I'm sure most people watching either have CP themselves or know somebody with CP. But I think it's important just to talk about how CP impacts my life specifically. So I was officially diagnosed at the age of 3 with spastic diplegia cerebral palsy. So for me, the way it impacts me is basically my legs. As I'm sure most of you are familiar, CP really differs from person to person. So for me, my mom had a normal pregnancy. Nothing was really suspected wrong, quote unquote. She had a scheduled C-section around 10 days before her actual due date, so I wasn't super early or anything. And then around 3 months old, she started to realize, I wasn't sitting up or crawling just at the same level as other babies in her mommy and me class. So then that's when she started to bring me to the doctors, and I went through, years of testing and MRIs and CAT scans and all of that to finally get to the diagnosis at the age of 3. So like many of us, I've never known anything other than living with CP. So it's just, always been a part of me, and, I'll share a little bit about that journey for me specifically. Oh. So I've had my personal ups and downs with my relationship with my disability and how I viewed it. But one thing that's remained consistent for me is my want and need to be heard. And I think that's pretty common across the disability community, and also not the disability community, but just, feeling like we need to work extra hard to hear our opinions and voices heard, which kind of always had me, lead down this path of wanting to share my story and how my disability impacted me. So why am I speaking to you today? So as the overview shares, but this session is really to talk about social media advocacy. And if you're unfamiliar with me, you may have seen a video of me walking on social media while scrolling through Instagram or TikTok. And as shared before, my Instagram following has grown from 2,000 followers to over 175,000 in just over a year. And I don't say this to intimidate anyone who, is trying to achieve these numbers, because for me, my goal has never been the numbers. They've just been kind of a nice added bonus. But I'll talk more about that in a bit. And most importantly, I'm passionate about sharing my story with others to help spread awareness, educate, and show the world that conversations around disabilities don't need to be scary or uncomfortable. Just because throughout my life, that was always kind of a common theme. People just being afraid to ask about my disability, afraid to ask how it impacts me, or how they can help, not knowing how to help. So I just really want to help kind of break down those barriers and show the world that, yes, I have a disability, but that's okay. And it doesn't need to be this huge, like, elephant in the room, scary conversation. We're just like anyone else. We're able to have, conversations and communicate about our wants and needs. So that really is what motivated me to get started. So when did I start openly sharing my story? So first, just to give you guys a little bit of background about how I got to where I am now with my platform, I wanted to tell you what kind of sparked that passion for me to get started. So throughout my life, I always felt that I was open about my disability. You know, I always felt that I was comfortable with it. And yes, I did have frustrations about certain limitations, but I always had in my head that I could accomplish what I wanted to, even if I need to adapt. So I never viewed my disability as a bad thing. And I always felt that if someone had a question about it, they could just come to me, and I would never hesitate, you know, to answer questions. I would share with people what they want to hear. Well, not what they want to hear, but you know, I would just answer questions honestly about my disability. And then one day I had kind of a light bulb moment in a conversation that made me shift my view and perception about how I should be approaching sharing my story. So to take it back a little more, I always had a passion to be a motivational speaker. I always envisioned that this would be something I pursue when I'm older and retired. You know, after I have a good career, and then I could really sit back and take time to do something that I'm passionate about. But through social media and, you know, the ability now to have a blog and really create your own platform, I always wanted to just start a blog writing, because I always had in my head these things that I wanted to say, but never sat down and got them out. So the conversation that really switched things for me is I was talking to a friend, and we had a mutual friend, and this mutual friend I had known for about 5 years, considered her to be a close friend. And when I was talking to my new friend, she had asked me what my disability was, and I could tell, you know, we had hung out a few times before and it was never brought up, so it was kind of like building up to this moment she finally felt comfortable. And you know, she asked me, I just am an open book. I'm like, oh, I have cerebral palsy, this is how it affects me, and so on. And she had told me that she asked my other friend that I had known for 5 years, and she did not know what my disability was. She didn't know the name of it, how it affected me, or anything. So in that moment, it was kind of twofold for me. On one hand, I was super grateful that this friend had not let my disability impact our relationship whatsoever. You know, she saw me for who I was. She wanted to be my friend, and you know, it wasn't even like a blip on her radar, like, you know, do we need to sit down and have this whole conversation about it? And then on the second hand, I felt like I was doing myself a disservice because, you know, as much as I say my disability doesn't hold me back from things, it's still very much so a real part of my life. So for a friend that I had considered close, not even to know the name of my disability or how it impacts me, kind of made me take a step back and realize maybe I should be the one proactively sharing my story versus waiting for people to come to me and ask me. So in that moment, I kind of put myself in the other person's shoes and realized that, which I never thought of this before, but how intimidating it could be to open up the conversation as someone who doesn't have a disability and ask someone, you know, what is wrong with them or what happened to them. So that moment kind of shifted me to wanting to speak proactively about it. So I decided I wanted to launch a blog, and I had, you know, I have the notes on my phone. I always would kind of just like write, like say I have some kind of experience in a grocery store, I'd write down how it made me feel, how I wish people would react, how, you know, stuff like that. So I started writing some blogs. But I was kind of terrified to open it up because, to be honest, I hadn't really spoken about my disability with my loved ones, really surface level things, but not how it really impacted my day to day. So me launching this blog was a big leap, really to just get some things off my chest, share what it was that I kind of go through, just to kind of help them understand. So beyond being terrified, I had these feelings, how would people react? What if I couldn't get content out consistently? And just all these things going on in my head leading up to officially, talking about my disability online. Because prior to that, I had never posted on social media with, for example, with my walker. I always would throw my walker to the side and run over here and take a picture, or get up out of my scooter and go somewhere else, like, stand away from my scooter for a post that I'm doing. And not necessarily that I was hiding my disability, but I just felt like I didn't want it to be in a content on my regular social media stuff. So then one day, I just took a leap on a random Monday night, not necessarily launching my blog, but just talking about cerebral palsy. And I just had an outpouring of support from people that I've known for years, my family, my friends, my loved ones, just saying that they were happy to hear that I'm comfortable enough to talk about this online. So the next step for me was just letting go of the expectation and control that I wanted going into officially launching a blog website. Before that, I wanted to create a bunch of content that I could backtrack and have pre-scheduled and make sure I'm consistent, and I talk about this on this date and this on this date. And I was just getting so much in my head that I was limiting myself from just taking the leap and starting, just going for it and seeing what happens. So that was another realization I had, just to follow my gut, move forward and talk about the things that I'm passionate about. So I ended up launching a blog in early 2019. So, about 2.5 years ago from now. And when I did that, I had a few blogs I put up right away. I got a huge outpouring of support. And then I just wasn't consistent with it, and that's okay. I was exploring things about myself and my disability that I had never explored before. So not only was it mentally draining and exhausting to, process, but also it's just hard with everything going on in life to keep up consistently with something like this. So I really just started it as a passion project, something to do in my spare time whenever I felt, inspired to write, and didn't put that pressure on myself that I needed to keep up with it, because I always felt that forced content wasn't as meaningful as, when I'm in the moment and passionate about a topic. So for me, at the onset of the pandemic, it really just gave me time, when everybody was quarantining or staying in, and I personally, was not really going out even to the grocery store. So I had a lot of time to reflect, think about how this pandemic was impacting me and my body, because I, went from walking to my office and around the grocery store and all these things to just really sitting very consistently. So through that, I had a lot of extra time where before I was traveling or seeing family and friends, and now I was just in my apartment. So I started writing. I started sharing more consistently on social media, and just things started to ramp up for me. So my priorities from the beginning to now is just staying true to myself and my why. And I think that's very important for anybody who's going to be sharing parts of their lives online. It's very vulnerable to do. And you're going to get a lot of feedback, unwanted feedback from people that you don't know, people from all over the world, people that hide behind their screen and make comments. So I think it's really important to define what it is that is motivating you to want to share, and staying true to that, and not letting those exterior elements, really impact you. So as I said earlier, I really just was passionate about sharing my story. I wanted to give kind of a day in the life look at what it's like living with a disability. And again, really just to show people that it doesn't need to be this huge, scary topic. And I'm just a human, like all of us. Another good priority that I constantly need to remind myself of is recognizing that I don't know everything. And especially when I started ramping up more consistently and I'm connecting with other people with disabilities who are sharing online, there's all these topics that come up, whether they're political or societal or government issue. Well, I guess that goes into political, but just a lot of aspects that it's okay not to know everything. Because I really just went into this wanting to share my story, what I experience, and to what as you do this, people kind of look to you to know all the right things to say, or they look to you like, oh, it's even yesterday was the beginning of disability employment month, and I didn't have a post prepared, and I don't have all these facts ready to go about what percentage of people with disabilities get hired, and just certain things like that. Is I need to be patient with myself and allow myself to just soak in information, and not always need to be the one alerting everybody, especially because I'm still pretty new to all this and still building up. Third is just continuing to stay authentic and honest. I think that's very important, just saying what's on my heart, keeping it real with my followers and myself, not really editing photos and, embellishing my stories. It's really just saying it how it is and being honest. Forming meaningful relationships with my community, which I've done, and really just connecting with other people who talk about living with CP or other disabilities, connecting with parents of children with disabilities, and just forming those relationships and discussing things that I go through that other people go through too, and just having people to relate to. And something that helps me is I try not to focus on the numbers, which I know is easier said than done. But, for me, I'm not like, oh, I need to post X, Y, and Z so that I can reach like this next milestone. I post because I'm passionate about a topic. I want to share this message with the world. And if people, positively react or, engage, that's great. If not, that's also okay, because I said what I wanted to say. And it's not these, ulterior motives of saying something only to grow my following. And then lastly, not comparing myself to others, which also is easier said than done. But I found a old kind of personal journal entry a couple weeks ago that was me from probably 2018, so before I had launched any of this. And I was just kind of writing down my emotions, just pretty raw. So I was reading it back a couple days ago. And in that journal entry, I wrote about how I was intimidated and didn't want to start talking about my story online because there were all these other people that were already doing it. And, I like to think I have a good sense of humor and sarcasm. And I had seen a few other people with CP that had these large followings. They were successful. They had books, they had YouTube channels. They talked about their disability. They made it fun and lighthearted. And I just got really discouraged because I was like, you know what? They're already doing it. What can I possibly contribute that hasn't already been said? And truly, like, I would buy their books, I would sit down open to read them, and I couldn't even bring myself to read the first page because I was so upset that they had beat me to it, or they were already out there crushing it, but I hadn't. And I had to have that personal shift that I am unique to myself. I bring something to the table that is different from every single other person in the world, and so do you. And so, like, once I kind of let go of the comparison of what other people have already achieved, I just went for it and figured, worst case, nothing comes from it. I get some things off my chest, and it is what it is. Best case, things start to take off as they kind of have now. So I think that's an important topic. Okay, so enough about me. So to talk about you, whether you're watching this because you want to get started advocating online and sharing your story and you don't know how, or you already started a couple years ago and things aren't taking off, or you're just now fresh, something that a good exercise, I think, is just defining your why. What is the root of the reason that you want to share your story? Is it similar to me that you just want how it started for me was just wanting my family and friends to kind of know what a day in the life was for me with a disability? Or are you passionate about, helping other people with disabilities kind of break down barriers, which also is similar to myself? But, you can ask yourself questions like, why do I want to share this story on my social media? What difference do I want to make? And just really defining what your intentions are. And something that I do even every couple of months just to kind of help me get centered is journaling. So just sitting down with a blank piece of paper and just writing, how you feel, what is motivating you, why do you want to do this? And I think that can help you really narrow down the basics of what is motivating you to do it. And then by writing it down, you can reference it. It's like, say, which I do this too, if I'm feeling like I'm in this rut and I'm unmotivated, I feel like maybe I'm comparing myself to others and I'm like, wow, they said something great, like they beat me to it, or I didn't think about this. Go back to that just to kind of reset and remind yourself, like, why are you doing this? You're doing this to make a difference in someone else's life, and even a difference in your life. So that's something that an exercise I would recommend doing. Secondly, going into anything, manage your expectations. So my platform growth, while it's been exceptional, it's nothing I planned for. Like, truly, I did not expect any of this. And to be honest, I'm still kind of catching up to the growth that my platform has experienced. And I'll get into this a little bit more later. I attribute this to the Instagram Reels feature and just my videos, going viral a lot, exposing me to different depths of the internet I never thought I'd be in, which also has its ups and downs. But a lot of hard work goes into growing your presence online. So I think just managing your own expectations. Don't expect, if you're going really hard for a couple months, for things to just blow up, and that's okay, because it just is, it comes at the right time. As I said before, comparison is extremely toxic and harmful. I think it's important to engage and collaborate with other creators in the niche that you want to enter, but don't compare your journey to theirs. As I said before, you have a unique story, personality, and experiences that make you different and truly stand out. And what you share, like, you never know whose life it will touch or who it will relate with. And that's been the best part for me, is really just getting those messages of people reaching out to me and saying, I never knew anybody else in the world like experienced what you just talked about in your post. And when I receive messages like that, like it's just as true for me, because I didn't grow up with people around me that had cerebral palsy or people around me that had disabilities. In that sense, I was kind of in my own bubble. And while my friends and family were super supportive and I could talk to them about these things if I wanted, they haven't been through them themselves. So opening this up to social media, I've just found so many people that I relate to in these experiences, and I never knew that was out there. So yeah, just sharing your story, even the littlest of things, you don't know who it'll connect with, and just remember who you are and that you bring value, even if you think you're similar to someone else. You're definitely not. So a big one is preparing for the trolls. And let me take a sip of water. So the beauty of social media is you can say whatever you want to say, but so can other people. So not everyone is going to agree with what you post, and that's super important. But for me, I think it's all about having those constructive conversations that go both ways. I've had posts in the past where I've posted something and somebody who was in a wheelchair permanently, they were offended by the way I had worded it. And I just didn't know any better. But, I read their comment, I responded to them, thanking them for bringing this to my attention, and I edited my caption to properly describe what I was trying to. And that's okay. We're all human. This is all a learning journey. Um, but and that person had thanked me. They're like, thank you for listening to me, and all of that. So that was a constructive conversation. You also have people who are not here to have a constructive conversation. There's people that want to hide behind a keyboard. They want to say negative things just to knock you down. And at the end of the day, you just have to remind yourself that that is a reflection of them and not you. So that's a reflection of what they're going through, the way they view themselves, the way they want to act in the world, and not what you're putting out there. So I know it's easier said than done, but don't let somebody online dim your light, because at the end of the day, that's all that they're striving to do. And if you let them win, then it's just not good. So sometimes the best response from you is no response at all, or to raise. Oh, I have a raised hand here. I'll keep going. Easier said than so yeah. So no response at all. It's okay to delete people. It's okay to block people. Protecting your mental space and all of this is extremely important. So I just want you, if you are being vulnerable online and sharing your story, just know that there are going to be people that aren't supportive of it. But hopefully you have a good, support base yourself in your personal real life that you can go to vent about, to talk about these things, and then just really remember who you are and why you're doing this, going back to your why. There's some people whose minds will never be changed, and that's okay. And it's not your responsibility to do so. So if you're familiar with my platform, you may have seen I created a hashtag Make It Stop Mondays, where really I'm just highlighting a rude or negative comment and talking about, the negative impact that it can make for just people in general, just going into anti-bullying and all of that. So for me, it's important to talk about these things because I want to destigmatize, the conversations around disabilities. So when I think the last one I posted, somebody commented that I'm ruining the internet for the way I walk, or posting videos of me walking. And in my head, I just think that's ridiculous because so many models post videos of them walking, and just because I walk different, why should I stop? You know? So it's kind of like the clap back that I do, but it's more importantly, as I said before, my videos, they're going viral. They're in depths of the internet of people that have no idea who I am, no idea why I walk the way I do. So it's my hope when they do see Make It Stop Monday reel, then they're realizing, this is why I shouldn't comment things like this. And usually the outpouring of support I get totally cancels out, the handful of really negative, mean ones I get. But I just think it's important to talk about them and shine a light on them and have them just fuel your content to keep moving forward. So I wanted to talk about some tangible social media tips, if anyone is interested in kind of taking the leap to get started. So as I said before, for me, Reels have been really helpful for my growth. Being authentic, obviously there's a lot of video involved in that. So if you're not comfortable with that, that's totally fine. There's other ways to grow your account. But I really just think it all goes back to being authentic and relating to your audience. The creators account on Instagram has really great tips. They usually share, when Instagram is rolling out new updates, different tips on, the way to use hashtags and stuff like that. They've been a great resource. Determining a niche. So for me, it's disability related advocacy. I like to travel, so disabled travel, accessible travel, things like that, but really defining something specific that you want to talk about. And then using around 3 to 5 relevant hashtags on your posts. Not really obsessing about hashtags, but just using them to help you get kind of in front of new people. And lastly, just engage with your followers. I really do take the time to read through the hundreds of comments I get and respond to them. If someone's taking time out of their day to compliment you or have, like I said before, a constructive conversation with you, I think as a creator, it goes such a long way that you're taking the time to respond back to them, thank them, whatever it may be. Another good tip that I do and did, especially at the beginning, is just interact with posts of others in your niche. So say there's this one creator that you really like, they talk about disability advocacy, for example, if that's something you want to talk about, they may not have the time to go through and respond to comments. So if you're just getting started, you can go through their comments and say one of their followers has a question about something. Feel free to jump in and respond to that question, with your perspective, but that just kind of inserts yourself into that conversation. And now that person is likely to hop over to your profile and see what you're all about. Do Q&As on your stories. They've been really fun for me just because one, you guys ask, I get really great questions that I don't even think people want to know, but they do. Just helps your followers get to know you a little bit more. And consistency, people always say consistency is so helpful, and I would agree. Just with growing my platform, consistency has been extremely important. But that said, it's not as important as your mental health. So if you need to take a break, if you need to take a week off of social media, if you need to take a month off of social media, that's okay, because you can't be pushing out content that is, if you're depleted inside, you're not going to be sharing your best content. You're just going to burn yourself out. Your heart's not going to be in the right place. So it's okay if you need to take a break. I recommend it. I try to do it every couple weeks. If there's just like a whole day where I don't post anything to my story, that is okay. So that brings me to the end of kind of my presentation. But I wish you all the best of luck if you do have, if you are getting started. I appreciate you all taking the time to listen, and I'll open it up now to any questions you may have, related to my presentation or whatever it may be.
All right. Thank you, Chelsea. We're just gonna see if anything popping in on the Q&A section. We've had a pretty, very active chat, so I'm sure there'll be some questions coming out. So,
Awesome.
yeah. I think you kind of touched on it. So how different, so where do you see, you started in 2019, where do you see the social media heading right now?
That's a good question. I think video, I think there's going to continue, just with the rise of TikTok too. I think video is going to continue to really be a big part of it. And also just going back to the being authentic, I think that it's what a lot of people look for. I think, and I hope that we're getting past the time of everyone, overly editing their pictures and, the whole like Instagram versus reality. It's my hope, at least, just to see big brands kind of go towards that direction of just being real and authentic, and then also the creators and advocates that are doing that too.
Okay. And so Nicole asks, Chelsea, are there any apps they use for making videos, etc., that you recommend?
Yeah, so really a lot of the editing I do is right in Instagram in the Reels app. But one I do like to use a lot is Splice. It's kind of like iMovie for your phone, but I just like the features a little bit better. You can, cut up clips, fast forward, slow down, add text. So Splice is another one I recommend.
Okay. Some other questions that are coming in. Let's see here. We'll give it a minute, see if anybody has. Okay. So the chat was really active. So here we go. Marie asked, Marie says, I feel like I have a good story and I've been on social media for a while, but I also feel self-conscious and I feel that other people have a better story than me. What kind of tips would you give her?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I talked about this a little bit earlier, just how I felt the same way. I was very discouraged before getting started because I saw a lot of people out there that were already talking about the things I wanted to talk to. So I completely relate to you. But I think it's just important to remember that you're unique. You've lived your own life that nobody else has. So you're going to be bringing something fresh to the table, no matter which way you look at it. So I think, just share what you want to share. Don't put expectations on yourself. And I'm a huge advocate against comparison. Don't compare yourself to what other people are doing or what they may have already done, because I personally didn't post or didn't start talking about this stuff online for that reason specifically. I felt that other people had already done it, and what could I possibly bring new to the table? But I was completely wrong. And I think that just, you never know who you can impact. And something that for me is, say you spend hours on a certain post and you finally get it up and it doesn't take off however that looks like for you. if you get one message of somebody saying like, wow, I relate to this, like I've never related to anybody else about this specific topic. It really helped me feel less alone, whatever their message may be. You helped one person in more ways than you know. And I think at the end of the day, if you're helping one person, then that's all that matters. It doesn't necessarily mean, I love talking about like quality over quantity. So if you're helping one person but you didn't get to help thousands, that's fine, because that one person is so important. So just some things to remember.
Nicole asks, I know you love to travel. What are the challenges with traveling what are the challenges with traveling with CP?
There's a ton. So when I travel, I use my mobility scooter. So that in itself is always a struggle, just dealing with the airlines. Thankfully, I haven't really come across a lot of issues in terms of major damage where my scooter is unable to be used, but just kind of that extra coordination that goes into it. And then whenever I arrive at a new place, I never really know what the accessibility level will be like. So traveling with a disability, a lot of research goes into it beforehand. As much as I love to be spontaneous and just show up somewhere, it's important for me to just take the time to realize, if I'm going to a new city, how will I get around? Will I have to order an extra large Uber every time I go out, or do they have an accessible, train station? So just adding in that extra level of research, and also being patient that things may not go the right way when you're traveling, because accessibility isn't usually every city's top of mind.
Shannon asks, Chelsea, as a podcaster, blogger, and disability influencer, much like myself, how do you deal with people who imitate your content?
I think it's a form of flattery. And, at the end of the day, if I'm putting out a message that I'm passionate about, if they want to amplify it in their own way, then that's personally okay with me. I mean, it can be frustrating sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's social media, so it's bound to happen. Sorry.
Jacob Pacheco asks, what are your next steps for you in your life aside from your career in social media? What has you excited?
Ooh, big question, Jacob. A lot has me excited. I think that the past year and a half has been really life-changing for me, just with my social media taking off the way it has. And I think now I'm just in this position where I'm figuring out what to do with it. And, next for me, I really want to continue to focus on my platform, what I can do with it, whether it's relaunching my Instagram live series or YouTube channel, still kind of defining that. And then also just shifting my career to focus more on motivational speaking, just all these aspects of life that I'm pretty passionate about. So a lot more to come, still kind of defining it right now, but just hoping to fully throw my time into all of this and see what happens.
Robert asks, I really like seeing you being mobile. How difficult is it for you to do videos of yourself walking around? And do you have someone helping you at all?
Yeah. So if you're not familiar, so I can walk independently. So how I show myself walking in all of my videos, it's really how I walk, around my apartment, around, let's say, a grocery store. I still haven't really been out with the pandemic, but so that's really how I walk. So I wouldn't say difficult, but I think long distances is when it gets me and I get out of breath and stuff like that. So that's when I use a mobility scooter that I call Scoots. But for the videos and stuff, I do have a tripod that helps film a lot of my content, but I also just have really great support systems. So My roommate Caitlin will help me. My sister will help me. My friends, if we're out and we're doing something, I hand them my phone. I'm like, hey, like before we go to this next thing, can you just take a video of me doing this? My mom is very helpful. So really just the people around me. I haven't really gotten to the level where I've hired a photographer or anything like that. But just people around me, my tripod.
Nicole asks, what are your thoughts on being a brand ambassador? How do you recommend we go about doing that if we're interested?
Do you mean a brand ambassador for like a company?
Yeah, getting paid specifically, she's asking. Yeah.
I think, determine what brands align most with you and your values, and reach out to them and just see, what, or no, I'm going to reverse. So what I did, so if you're unfamiliar, I work with the brand Aerie, and I always was very drawn to their Aerie Real mission and just their inclusivity and stuff like that. So before I started working with them, I just started I just posted in alignment with their mission of Aerie Real, which just so happened to kind of align with my own personal values. So I was just putting these messages out there. I tagged them, I used their hashtags, and they ended up approaching me. But I would just, if there's a brand you want to work with, just kind of act like you're already working with them. And hopefully it can be reciprocated down the road.
AJ asks, have you had someone take your content without asking?
I have, yeah. It happens. I haven't at the beginning, I was kind of excited for it because I was like, oh, this is great. Somebody else is like resharing my stuff. Now that I'm more experienced and realize that that's not necessarily okay to do. It's happened, and I haven't really contacted anyone to take down my content, but it has happened.
All right. Might give it a minute, see if any other questions pop up.
Okay.
So how often, so what you're, as you're saying earlier, just to remind people how, because you said like sometimes it's not to let, don't get tied to the social media because then you have it work for you, not work for it. Is there, do you have anything other than, it's like, do you have anything, any services or things that you utilize that you can add, what's the word I'm looking for, to schedule posts or anything like that? Do you recommend anything like that?
I actually don't. What I do sometimes is I'll spend a day, whether it's like a full day just creating content, changing outfits, doing different things. Another day kind of editing a bunch of videos and writing captions and all of that stuff, and just planning it out in advance. I've been working on creating a content calendar just so, by allocating that time to do it all at one time, and having the post ready to go where, all I have to do on the day I want to post it is pull up the video, put in the caption, and press post. That's been helpful. I don't know of any scheduling apps like for an Instagram or TikTok. I'd have to look into that, but pre-planning out content is helpful for that because day of, you can just quickly do it instead of needing to set aside a couple hours to put it all together.
Absolutely. So what else would you say is like would be some, say, like when it comes to like the actual technology, is there any specific cameras or any specific things that you've seen to have been worked really well for you?
Yeah, I do everything on my phone. I have an iPhone 12, so pretty high quality camera in itself. I have been looking into getting a camera just to kind of invest a little bit more in all of this, but for now, just my phone. I do have a tripod with a ring light. I have a clicker that goes with it, so if I need to, time something out and do it from a distance, that's really helpful. For when I'm doing, interviews or Instagram live, I do use my Apple AirPods, but I also have a whole setup with a microphone that plugs into my laptop and my camera. But as far as the actual videos and photos, really just my phone right now.
Nicole asks, how do you balance your day job with keeping up with posting on social media?
It's been a lot. And I'll say, sometimes I sit back and I realize, how do I do this? But in the height of the pandemic, I really worked my day job till like 6:30, 7, whatever it may be, depending on the day. And then at night I would do my posts. I would really dedicate my weekends, because I still wasn't really going out seeing people. I would dedicate my weekends to creating content for the next week. So kind of how I said before, just pre-planning it. So when I did need to post it, I didn't really need to take too much time out of that specific day, which was really helpful during the week when I was really busy. And just kind of creating those boundaries, when I'm at work, trying not to check in on my social media platforms as much, just holding up those boundaries. And then in the evenings, that's when I would engage with people. I would respond to comments, and stuff like that.
And so do you have, when it comes to like ideas that you have, do you have like a notebook or something next to you? It's like, oh, I want to do a reel on this, or I want to do some, or how spontaneous are your posts?
Yeah, so I really utilize the notes in my phone. So, if for example I'm out, at a park and somebody walks by and like kind of says something to me, like I'll write it in my note, like, oh, this would be a good post. I mean, even in the moment, if I'm like, oh, that was rude to say, but let me talk about it on social media. So I mean, for me, with being so busy with my full-time job, things have been pretty spontaneous. But for example, March, Cerebral Palsy Awareness Month, I was pretty structured that month. I had Instagram lives slated 1 or 2 times a week. I had specific reels slated to go out, 2 to 3 times a week, just with specific facts on CP, and stuff like that. And if there was something spontaneous I wanted to throw in there that month, I could. But overall, I had a theme and the things that I really wanted to get out. So it's really just been an ebb and flow. I'm hoping over the next couple of months to get more strategic, have specific dates planned out of specific topics I want to talk about, but also just having that flexibility and that spontaneous side of it, just if there is something that happens in my personal life that I just want to talk about, or if there's a specific world event that I want to share my opinion on, I think it's important just to have that kind of flexibility in there.
And so does that help? Do you feel pressured at all that you have to make sure you keep posting things for your fans?
Yeah. Especially, I do. There's sometimes, I'll see a specific topic in the disability community start to go viral or get a lot of attention that I couldn't have planned for, because either some event happened that sparked the conversation, or there's a specific day that I didn't know about, like a day dedicated to something like that. So I do feel a level of pressure sometimes to respond, or that people are looking for me to make a comment. But that just goes back to being patient with myself, that it's okay not to know everything. It's okay not to know the right things to say. And if sometimes, I'm just not feeling it, or really just can't pump out a long caption or something like that on that day, that's totally okay. And just kind of having that patience with myself, I think is important, but there is a certain level of pressure.
Okay. Nicole does say, so she knows you'll be posting something about World CP Day on October 6th.
Coming up.
She says, how did your family and friends react to your videos going viral? Did the fact that you were very recognizable impact them in any way?
Yeah, I think it kind of took all of us by surprise, myself included, because you can't plan when you go viral. You can't plan and you can't predict it. So even the first time one of my videos did, I remember, I would be with friends and then I check my phone like hours later and I'm like, whoa, like how did this, I'm like, is this correct? Like it would jump from a couple hundred to a couple thousand. And in those moments, like I was so blown away. I'm like, what is going on? But I think my family and friends have been extremely supportive. It's been helpful for my relationships with them because I think they're learning to understand me in ways that I never really opened myself up before. So I think they're just proud and excited to hear what I have to say in relation to these things. And I mean, I think it helps them with their own advocacy in their own lives because it really does. And, everyone has to advocate about something, whether it's you're in a Target and you see somebody walk by and somebody say something rude and do you interfere? Do you not, so I think it's helped the people personally in my life be more mindful about how they approach certain situations. And then just knowing that I'm passionate about, this disability advocacy. I'm passionate about being mindful about the way I speak about disabilities, and also something I'm continuously learning about, the right way to approach certain conversations. But I think it also helps them realize, the right or wrong ways to say things. So it's trickling into their lives and the people they know too. So.
Okay. Some other questions for Chelsea? Yeah, the chat saying they love your attitude and level head, Chelsea. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So I think we are, I think we're all set now. So thank you very much, Chelsea. This has been fantastic. And and she's not even 25.
Oh, I am 25. I'm going to be 29. But thank you for that compliment.
So this is great. So yeah, thanks a lot, Chelsea. And where can people, obviously people can find you on Instagram. Do you have any other things that you want to direct people?
Yeah. So I'm at Real Chelsea Bear on Instagram. I also have been starting to use TikTok a little more and Twitter. And then my website is chelseabear.com. I don't keep it too up to date, so social media will be the best place. But that's pretty much it.
Cool. All right.